The living room was tight and uncomfortable when I looked at my mother Sophia and my younger sister Evelyn. Evelyn announced that she and her husband Alex needed a place to stay due to their tough times. My mother's face was excited, almost like a child opening gifts on Christmas morning. Sophia smiled and embraced Evelyn in a big, welcoming hug, saying, "Of course, you and I can stay here." "No problem. We'll make room for you." My heart began to swell up. This was our small 2-bedroom home that I had worked so hard to keep up. But as always, my own needs seemed to come last. I tried to stay calm and said, "Mom, could we talk for a minute?" I wanted to avoid sounding upset, but it was challenging to hide it. Sophia dismissively waved her hand without even looking at me. "Not now, Harper." "We need to prepare the guest room for Evelyn and Alex," she said. Evelyn gave me a smug smile as she enjoyed the attention she was receiving. As my anger grew, my fists clenched. "This isn't just your decision," I said, slightly raising my voice. "I don't agree with them moving in without talking about it because I also live here." Sophia turned to face me, her face initially stiffening. "Be wary of your tone, young woman," she warned. "While Evelyn puts her family first, what about me?" As I asked, my voice broke with agony. "I've sacrificed so much to keep this home running, but you treat me like I'm just in the way." Sophia's eyes hardened as she drew nearer, pointing accusingly at me. "If you can't accept your sister's situation, maybe you should find another area to live." Her comments were like a slap across the face. Evelyn was enjoying the drama she had caused, as seen by the smile behind her hand. "Okay, Mom." My voice wavered with anger and grief as I spoke. "Maybe I will." Without waiting for a response, I turned and ran out of the living room, my eyes full of hot tears. Finally, I had reached my breaking point. I was pacing my room back and forth with tears running down my face. How could my mother be so uncaring after everything I had done to keep our house in order? Evelyn was pushing me away to make room for her and her husband, who never seemed to be able to keep down a work. I was startled out of my trance by a knock on the door. Mom's voice, Harper, sounded irritated from the other end. "This is something we need to talk about." I threw open the door and glared at her. "Talk about how you're replacing me with your favorite daughter." The look on my mother's face stiffened. "Don't be too dramatic. We must help Evelyn and Alex because they are going through a tough time. Our help." I scoffed and crossed my arms as if I were attempting to help. "I've been covering half of the expenses around here while Evelyn just roams about taking advantage of everyone. Pay attention to what you say." Mom spoke suddenly. "Evelyn is going through a difficult time. The least you could do would be to show compassion." I chuckled bitterly. "It's good to hear that you have compassion." "How recently have you shown me compassion?" Mom's eyes widened as her face tensed. "That brat isn't appreciative. After all I've done for you and all you've done for me," I shot back, raising my voice. "You only criticize me, put Evelyn first and put me down. Anything she does is enough." Mom screamed, her face red with anger. "I want you to talk to me like that at my own house." "Your house," I yelled in response. "I've been using my pay to keep this house together while you go out of your way to please Evelyn." Mama's face was contorted with anger. "If you can't even be the most basic kind to your sister, maybe you need to find your place." The power of her words made me feel as though all the oxygen had been sucked out of my lungs. "To put it simply," I said, "you're kicking me out. If you must learn, then respect." Mom said coldly. Something inside of me cracked fine at that moment. My voice was shaky as I spoke, barely controlling my wrath. "I'll go, but don't rush back to me." When Evelyn and her jerk husband drank you dry, Mom's eyes opened in wonder, but she was too busy to respond. I slammed the door in her face. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks when I realized I would finally have enough. After the heated argument with Mom, I felt like my entire world was collapsing, and I collapsed to the ground, tears running down my cheeks. I knew there was no turning back now. I had to move away, start over, and escape the toxic environment of my family. I had to cease enduring their brutality and favoritism, even if it hurt. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend Nora, trying not to cry anymore. "Hi there. I need a huge favor." At first, my voice was tremulous. "Could I spend a little time at your house?" "Harper, what's going on, of course?" The call was answered by Nora's anxious voice. "It's a long story," I said, taking a long breath. "I'll tell you everything when I get there, won't I?" "Okay, if I come over tonight." Recalling her comforting words, Nora responded without hesitation, "My door is always open for you." I started to collect my possessions. It was hard to sort through the pieces of my life in this house, the one I had worked so hard to keep up, and then have it tossed away as if I were nothing. As I folded clothes and packed my things, memories flooded my head. I thought about all the times I had sacrificed something to keep things going here, the birthdays and holidays when my efforts went unappreciated. Mom's entire attention was focused on Evelyn, and I had to blink away the tears that were burning in my eyes. I couldn't allow myself to fall apart now, so I had to stay strong and begin a new life away from the stifling family dynamics that had kept me back for so long. A knock on my bedroom door shocked me. The voice of Evelyn's husband responded, "Harper, it's Alex." I tensed up at once. I knew it too well to be terrified of what he would say. "What do you desire from his polished rhetoric and cunning methods? Can we have a conversation?" I yelled, sharply. Alex's tone was too calm and gentle to inquire. I think there was a misunderstanding. I scowled and yanked the door open, glaring at him. "The only people that don't understand one another are you two, thinking you can just walk into my life and take charge of it." Alex held up his hands, trying to look innocent. "I'm aware that this is a challenging situation, but we desperately need your help. Evelyn and I are going through some rough patches. Every one of you pushed yourself through hardships." Alex's expression hardened as I snapped back. "Don't try to guilt me into allowing your reckless behavior." "Harper, pay attention to your tone. Family members ought to support each other." I laughed bitterly and added, "Tell Mom and Evelyn that, because they've made it pretty clear where I stand in this family." Before Alex's response, I dragged my packed bags with me as I pushed by him. "I'm tired of all of you. Do not even try to lure me back." I stepped outside into the cool night air. I felt as though a burden had been removed from my shoulders for the first time in a long time. A small glimmer of hope that I wouldn't be constantly disparaged or taken advantage of in the future appeared. When I arrived at Nora's apartment, she greeted me with a warm hug, took my bag, and ushered me inside. She muttered, "Harper, I'm so sorry you're going through this," with sympathetic eyes. I gulped down more tears and smiled weakly at her. "Thank you for letting me stay. I just had to leave them alone." I followed Nora into her cozy living room, which was a welcome change from the stuffy, tense environment of my family's home. "Would you like a drink?" she went on. "Make yourself at home," gesturing to her plush couch. "Maybe a glass of wine." I shook my head and sank among the soft cushions. Just a little water would be wonderful. "Warm regards." Just then, Nora came into the kitchen. I took a deep breath, allowing the final hours of reality to set in. I was officially alone. Finally, I was out of the toxic cycle that had been depleting me for so long. Nora came back with a reassuring grin and a glass of water. "As soon as you're ready, I'll listen." I sipped the cool water, nodded, and let out a long sigh. Finally, I began to tell her the entire convoluted story, including Mom's blatant favoritism, Evelyn's entitled behavior, and the last furious argument that led to my eviction. I said, sharing everything with Nora. She listened with a furrowed brow. "You can tell I'm angry about it. How they treated you is unbelievable." As she spoke, Nora's voice became angry. "Even though all you did was assist the family, they brushed you off as if it didn't matter." I replied, "I have a lot of emotion in my voice despite the pain. I just can't keep putting myself through that kind of hurt. You're behaving responsibly." Nora reached over and squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Harper, now is the time to start living for yourself. Her words resonated deeply, giving me a fresh sense of determination. For a very long time, I had sacrificed my health and happiness for a family that didn't seem to care about me. But now, finally, that chapter was over. Throughout the following days, Nora's bedroom was small and cozy, and I began to settle in. As I unpacked my belongings, I had the impression that I was uncovering sides of myself that had been concealed by the weight of my family's expectations. With every item I put away, I felt like I had a bit more freedom. I started taking up new interests and allowing myself to try things I had always wanted to do. I took a beginner's pottery class, joined a local book club, and met people who shared my passion for reading. Pursuing things for my enjoyment felt nice. It was as if a weight had been lifted. I had no one judging me or criticizing my choices. I was free to enjoy myself at work. I came to work with renewed energy, confidently offering my ideas and gaining my employer's trust with my dedication. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that had nothing to do with pleasing anyone but myself. I was now starting to realize my worth, regardless of what my family thinks. Weeks passed. I was living for myself for the first time, and the future seemed brighter than ever as the weight of my past slowly lifted and was replaced by a freedom I had never known. A few weeks after moving in with Nora, my phone started calling constantly. Mom or Evelyn were always the ones who left voicemails begging me to answer. I ignored them since I wasn't ready to reopen that chapter of my life. Now that I was beginning to feel better, I didn't want to risk getting sucked back into the turmoil. While Nora and I were catching up over takeout one evening, my phone rang again. I was about to muffle it with a roll of my eyes, but Nora's stern but tender eyes stopped me. She gave me a supportive nod and went on to say, "I think you should answer it. Maybe they finally have something important to say." With a heavy sigh, "What do you want?" I took it. "Mom, Harper, thank you so much." Mom talked in a panic, her voice strained and terrified. "For us, this is a major issue." A strange, bittersweet joy entered my chest as I heard the desperation in her tone. "What's the matter?" Unable to function without my presence. "It's more than that. We're behind on the mortgage payments, and the utility companies are threatening to cut everything off," Mom said tensely. A dry, humorless laugh from my lips. "Gee. How did that occur?" Dismissing the person helping with the expenses might have been a mistake. "Harper, please," Mom pleaded in a desperate tone. "We need your help. We're struggling to make ends meet." Their situation filled me with a sly pleasure. Hearing that things had finally changed after years of feeling unappreciated and disregarded was almost gratifying, you know. "Mom, that's just what I told you about. You chose Evelyn over me, and now you're dealing with the consequences," I replied icily. "I was mistaken." "Okay," Mom's emotive voice broke. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. Please lend us a helping hand with this." I felt a little sad for Evelyn at one point when I heard her muffled cries in the background. However, I was aware that the years of pain were too tremendous for me to allow myself to be dragged back in. "I apologize, Mom. You told me to leave," I said in my voice steely, and I did. "It is now your responsibility to find a solution on your own. That's all." I ignored the barrage of voicemails and texts that followed and hung up. Finally free, I had had enough of them. Nora looked at me with a mixture of concern and understanding. "Are you okay?" Softly, she asked. I nodded after taking a deep breath. "Yes, I'm doing fine." My voice was one of calm might. It's quite rewarding to see them suffer the repercussions at last. I had a strange feeling of both freedom and shame as I spoke to Nora. I'm standing up for myself. They have to lie in their bed after making it. Nora gave me a supportive smile and said, "Harper, you have every right to defend yourself. They have to cope with the consequences of their choices." As the weeks went by, Mom's and Evelyn's calls became more urgent. I learned that Alex had been hiding significant debts, which led to his termination and worsened their financial situation. Even while a tiny part of me felt awful for not stepping in, a greater part of me understood that helping would only make the dysfunction worse. Sometimes the only way to truly break free is to let the consequences play out. In the months to come, as agonizing as it is, I had heard that my old home was becoming unmanageable. Nora, who was informed about local gossip, gave me the specifics. The yard where I'd always met was now overgrown and unkempt. The utilities had been cut off, and debt collectors were harassing them. For a split second, I felt twisted delight. After years of being treated as if I were invisible in my own home, it seemed poetically right to watch them suffer the repercussions. One evening, when Nora arrived home from work, she appeared anxious. "I saw your mom at the grocery store today." She looked tough and hesitantly responded after seeing my answer. I raised an eyebrow. I'm sure I would want to hear more. "Well, how?" Nora moaned and shook her head. Her disheveled hair and clothes suggested that she had gone days without sleep. For a moment, I was a little ashamed, but I quickly pushed that feeling away. "All right." Now she might fully understand what fighting is like, I replied, trying to seem indifferent, and Nora gave me a sympathetic glance. "I know you still hurt Harper, but try not to let their mistakes rule your life. You've done a fantastic job moving forward, so don't let them stop you." I nodded, taking her words to heart, even though a small part of me couldn't help but enjoy their hardship. After years of mistreatment and neglect, it appeared as though the universe was finally making things right. A few days later, my phone rang from an unidentified number. Against my better judgment. "Hello," I said. "It's Evelyn, Harper," I said cautiously. A strained whisper came from the other end. Her voice was filled with fatigue and fear, which I could detect. A tide of bitterness surged within me. "What are you trying to find?" "Evelyn, I need your help." As she coughed out her voice, I was clueless about what to do because everything was falling apart. But I was powerless to stop myself. Laugh. It's amusing. When you and Mom threw me out like I didn't exist, I felt precisely like that. Evelyn's cries sounded frantic. I was wrong. "Harper, you have to help us, please. We're in terrible shape." A twisted part of me reveled in her pain. At last, they would have what I had had, the moment I had dreamed about many times. "Why should I help you?" "Evelyn?" When I inquired coldly, you and Mom made it clear that I was no longer part of the family. "Please, Harper." She shuddered and pleaded in her voice. "I'll do anything. I'm sorry about how we treated you. Please don't allow us to end up homeless." I could hear the genuine desperation in her voice, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. "You know what, Evelyn, almost," I said in a cold, strong voice. I said, "You deserve this so much. Maybe now you'll know what it's like to be disregarded. That's all." I hung up the phone with a strange sense of contentment. Since they were the ones who started this, I wasn't going to save them. Weeks kept extending into months. I gained additional knowledge regarding the situation at my former home. Occasionally, Nora would give me an update on the latest happenings, such as the mounting debt from unpaid bills, the regular visits of collectors, and even rumors that Evelyn and Alex were turning to illicit ways to get money. I watched their lives fall apart with a terrible sense of satisfaction after years of being treated like second-class citizens in my own family. It felt like poetic vengeance to watch my family bear the consequences of their actions. I couldn't help but feel a little depressed even though they had hurt me. I was saddened by their decline because they were still members of my family. We were catching up over a bottle of wine one evening when Nora subtly brought up the topic. "Harper," she responded, "I know you're still in pain from everything that happened. However, don't you suppose that it could be time to release some of that rage?" I sighed and swirled the wine in my glass. "I don't know, Nora. Since they have put up with so much for me over the years, I believe they deserve every bit of it." Nora reached across the table and gave my hand a comforting squeeze. "I get it. Believe me, I agree, but holding on to that grudge will just make you feel worse. In the end, her words struck a chord as profound as seeing my family fall apart. It occurred to me that clinging to all of that resentment might only keep me stuck in the past. The next day, as I was preparing for an important presentation at work, Mom called me on the phone. I thought for a moment before answering. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Harper." Mom's voice could barely be heard above a whisper since it was so emotional. I don't even know where to start. However, I prepared myself for additional manipulation or explanations. Instead, Mom murmured, her voice softening and laced with faint sobs, "I'm very sorry." Harper's voice trailed off as she talked. "I was a terrible mother to you. I gave you a lot less than you were worthy of." I felt my resolve waver as she persisted in honestly taking responsibility for the harm she had caused me. "I know I can't take back what I did." Her voice was filled with regret. "Please let me try. I'll do anything to earn your forgiveness," she pleaded. At that moment, something inside of me changed. I would want to watch them struggle, though. Suddenly, I understood that holding on to this grudge was only making me feel worse. I took a deep breath and spoke more quietly than I intended. "Mom, I can't pretend that everything is going well between us." I felt a big weight lift as I began to let go of the animosity that had been keeping me down for so long. "You hurt me, I know," she said, her voice shaking, "and if you'll let me breathe deeply, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "All right, Mom," I said. "At last, let's start over, one step at a time." It would not be an easy journey. But I realized then that the secret to true healing would be forgiveness, both for them and for myself. That emotional conversation. I hoped that we could work things out, even if it would take time. In the months to come, Mom made a sincere effort to make amends. I was able to tell her about the years of abuse and neglect I had endured when she invited me to join her for weekly dinners. It hurt to be heard at last, but it felt nice to see the genuine regret in her eyes. Alex, on the other hand, avoided Evelyn. When I last heard from them, they had moved into a small apartment and were slowly rebuilding their lives. I maintained animosity toward them despite knowing that it would only keep me from moving forward. Meanwhile, I was having fun being self-sufficient. In the workplace, I began a side project that allowed me to show off my creativity and problem-solving skills. My boss was thrilled by my dedication, and soon after, there were whispers that I was getting promoted. In my personal life, I took up hobbies and interests that I had neglected for too long. I joined a local book club, which allowed me to engage in lively discussions and discover new literary universes. I even started instructing clay classes. Creating clay is an easy approach to develop focus and calm. Nora was my unwavering support system, encouraging me whenever I needed it. "I'm rather proud of you," Harper told me one night as she sipped a bottle of wine on her balcony. "You've made such progress," she said, something that made me feel good, and I smiled. "You were crucial to my accomplishment," I said gratefully. "You were there for me when my own family wasn't." As the months passed, I could practically sense that I was letting go of the past. The resentment and animosity that had previously controlled me were replaced by a fresh sense of self-worth and confidence. One evening, as I was getting ready to go out with some coworkers, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom, and I wanted to let you know how proud I am of you. "Harper, you've grown into such a strong, self-reliant woman, and I'm so happy to be a part of your life again." Tears burned in my eyes as I read her message, but they weren't painful or bitter. They were tears of gratitude and healing. I had finally broken the toxic cycle that had been preventing me from moving forward for so long. My identity was no longer defined by the maltreatment and disregard of my past. I was surrounded by folks who truly appreciated and encouraged me as I blazed my own trail when I stepped out into the crisp evening air. I had a profound sense of peace. I had emerged from the long and difficult journey stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before. I was living my life for myself for the first time,